Rob Reiner's name has appeared in the credits of some of the most beloved films ever made, but the truth is this: most people never knew the real man behind them. They knew the laughs, the lines, the unforgettable moments, but not the quiet battles, private losses, and hidden stories that shaped the director who shaped us. Reiner's influence didn't come from being the loudest person in the room. It came from something far deeper, a lifetime of turning vulnerability into art. And now, looking back on everything he left behind, the world is finally realizing how much of himself he poured into every frame. Before Rob Reiner became a director, he was simply a child trying to grow up in the shadow of a giant. His father, Carl Reiner, was a comedy legend, a man whose face could light up television screens before Rob had even learned to walk. People assumed this gave Rob a head start. What they didn't see was the pressure, the fear that he would never be anything more than Carl's son. As a teenager, he wrestled with a terrifying idea. What if he didn't have a voice of his own? Friends later said that insecurity followed him everywhere, but instead of running from it, Reiner carried it with him, letting it carve out the emotional honesty that would define his work. And that honesty appeared most clearly in a film that surprised even him: Stand By Me. On the surface, it was a coming-of-age story about four boys searching for a lost body. But behind the camera, it was something much more personal. Reiner connected to the story because he understood what it felt like to lose innocence before you were ready. He knew the ache of growing up too quickly, of facing emotions adults didn't think children could understand. Many people don't know this, but the final scene, the older Gordy typing the last words, was inspired by moments from Rob's own childhood. He once said that directing the film felt like finally speaking aloud a memory I didn't know I'd been carrying. That's why Stand By Me feels so real. It wasn't just a movie, it was something he lived. But if Stand By Me revealed Reiner's heart, The Princess Bride revealed his magic. What audiences never saw was how close the film came to never happening at all. Studios thought the script was too strange, too funny, too romantic, too adventurous, too everything. They told him the movie didn't fit any category. Reiner didn't care. He fought for it because he knew exactly what the story was really about: the bond between a parent and child. His emotional connection came from his relationship with his own father, and especially from a bedtime ritual they shared when he was young. That's why the film is framed as a grandfather reading to his grandson. It wasn't just a narrative device, it was Reiner preserving a memory. And when audiences decades later still quote the lines and feel the warmth of that story, they're feeling a piece of Reiner's childhood, given as a gift to the world. Then came When Harry Met Sally, a film so honest about relationships that people wondered how Rob Reiner captured romantic truth better than most romance writers. The secret was simple: he wasn't writing fantasy. He was writing from experience. Reiner was going through a period of loneliness and uncertainty, and he poured those feelings into Harry's character: the doubts, the frustrations, the fear of connection, the search for meaning. Even the famous diner scene that became a cultural moment came from a conversation Reiner had with friends about the disconnect between what men think women experience and what women actually experience. Reiner's willingness to explore that awkward truth changed romantic comedies forever. He didn't glamorize love, he examined it. But while audiences were falling in love with his heartfelt work, Reiner was quietly reinventing himself behind the scenes. Few directors have ever shifted genres as boldly as he did. After soft-hearted romance, he jumped into psychological horror with Misery. What almost no one knows is that the film reflected Reiner's own anxieties about fame, specifically the fear of being trapped by public expectations. Annie Wilkes wasn't just a character to him. She was a metaphor for the pressure every director faces: the pressure to please, to repeat success, to survive the gaze of an audience that demands more. That's why the film feels so psychologically sharp. Reiner wasn't looking at a monster from the outside. He was confronting something he recognized on the inside. Then came A Few Good Men, the courtroom drama that became a cultural landmark. The world remembers Jack Nicholson yelling, "You can't handle the truth," but almost nobody knows the story behind how that moment happened. Nicholson wasn't supposed to deliver the line with that explosive intensity. Reiner gently pushed him for something deeper, something more raw. He told him, "Say it the way you'd say it if you believed you were absolutely right." Nicholson listened. He did one take, then another, then a third. What you see in the final film is the take Reiner chose, the one that carried the weight of a moral wound. When the crew watched the playback, they went silent. Reiner had captured lightning. But behind all this artistic brilliance, Reiner carried a weight people never saw. Living in the shadow of Karl Reiner wasn't just a childhood struggle, it followed him into adulthood too. For years, he felt like audiences assumed his success came from his father's name. What they didn't know was that Carl once told Rob privately, "You're doing things I never could." It was one of the rare moments the elder Reiner allowed himself to say something emotional. Rob carried that with him always. It freed him from a lifetime of comparison. And in his later years, as the awards faded and younger filmmakers took the spotlight, Reiner quietly stepped into a new role. Mentor. He didn't need cameras or headlines. He spent his time helping new directors who felt the same insecurities he once battled. Actors said he made every set feel safe, not just creatively, but emotionally. Crew members said he remembered everyone's name. And when he believed in a film, he defended it with everything he had. In the end, Rob Reiner didn't just tell stories. He taught people how to feel again. He reminded audiences that laughter, heartbreak, courage, and honesty were worth capturing, worth sharing, worth remembering. And that's why the world feels his loss so deeply now, not because he was famous, but because he was familiar, because somewhere in our memories, his films became part of our lives. And maybe that's the truest measure of a storyteller, not the awards on a shelf, not the headlines, not even the box office numbers. It's the quiet, uncounted moments where someone's work becomes part of your life without you realizing it. Rob Reiner didn't just direct movies. He directed moments that stayed with us long after the theater lights came back on. Somewhere right now, a parent is showing their child The Princess Bride, watching their face light up at the same lines that made them laugh decades ago. Somewhere, a young actor is studying A Few Good Men, trying to understand how one scene can carry so much truth. Somewhere, a teenager is watching Stand By Me for the first time and discovering that childhood, friendship, and loss feel the same, no matter how many years go by. That's the thing about Rob Reiner's films. They weren't just stories, they were mirrors. They helped us understand love in its messiest, funniest form. They reminded us how fragile courage can be. They showed us that growing up is complicated, that friendship leaves a mark, and that truth always costs something. His work didn't rely on spectacle or noise. It relied on honesty, the kind you feel deep down, even if you can't explain it. And maybe that's why his passing hits so many people unexpectedly hard. Because Reiner's films didn't belong to Hollywood. They belonged to us. They were a part of sleepovers and late-night conversations, a part of heartbreaks and reconciliations, a part of long drives, rainy afternoons, and the quiet moments when we needed a story that felt real. His legacy isn't just a filmography. It's a collection of emotional anchors, scenes, lines, characters, and moments that helped us navigate life when we didn't have the words ourselves. And long after credits rolled, those moments kept teaching us something. So if Rob Reiner meant something to you, if one of his films helped you through a moment or stayed with you longer than you expected, share that with someone. Tell a friend. Leave it in the comments. Pass the memory forward, because the only way a storyteller truly disappears is if the stories they gave us stop being told. But with Rob Reiner, that won't happen. Not today, not ever. His work lives on every time someone quotes a line, revisits an old favorite, or shows one of his films to the next generation. And maybe that's the most fitting goodbye we can give him. Not sadness, but gratitude. Thank you, Rob, for the laughs, for the truth, for the stories that shaped us. And to everyone watching, which Rob Reiner moment will you never forget? Tell me below, because his story deserves to continue through yours.